This is the review for Concept Quiz 20. On the first 4 problems here, we're using the functions that are provided. So in part A, we're doing 2 times g of x minus h of x. So we're just plugging everything in. 2 multiplied by g of x is x squared minus 3x plus 2 minus h of x is 2x minus 5. Make sure you have this expression in parentheses because we'll need to distribute here and we need to distribute here. So this becomes 2x squared minus 6x plus 4 minus 2x plus 5. And then if we simplify, we get 2x squared minus 8x plus 9. Alright, on part B, we're multiplying h of x times g of x. So we have 2x minus 5 multiplied by x squared minus 3x plus 2. So if you need a way of organizing your multiplication, you can always make a rectangle with 2x minus 5 on one side and then the x squared minus 3x plus 2 on the other side, and then multiply all the terms. So we have 2x cubed, negative 6x squared, 4x, negative 5x squared, positive 15x, and negative 10. And then look for like terms, so we end up with 2x cubed. These combine to negative 11x squared. These combine to 19x, and then minus 10. Now on part C, notice first the difference between B and C. This is a multiplication. Here, this is not multiplication. This is what we call composition, which means you're taking the function h of x and plugging it into x on function f. So I'm taking this function and I'm dropping it in place of the x in function f. So if we do the composition, we end up with 4 quantity this entire expression, 2x minus 5. That got substituted for x, and then I'm squaring it. If you want to simplify this, you're multiplying 2x minus 5 times 2x minus 5. Be careful not to try to distribute the 2. This is not 4x squared plus 25. You actually have to do first outer, inner, and last, so then you end up getting 4x squared minus 10x minus 10x is minus 20x, and then plus 25. And then if we multiply, that's 16x squared minus 80x plus 100. Alright, then on part D, this notation means find the inverse of f. So f of x is 4x squared. If we list the operations that are occurring in the original function, then we can do the inverse set of operations and figure out what our inverse function is. So following PEMDAS here, the first thing that's happening is x is being squared. The second thing that's happening is that this is getting multiplied by 4. So if we go and try to undo these operations, the inverse of multiplying by 4, so notice we're starting at the bottom here, is dividing by 4. And the inverse of squaring something is square rooting it. So if we follow these steps and write our inverse function, we get inverse of f equals, we need to divide x by 4, and then square root the entire expression. Not just x, but the entire expression. Alright, now moving on to part E through G, we're using this table right here. So g of 9 is asking when x is equal to 9, what is function g, which is here, which is 15. So if you plug into there, f of 7 means when x is 7, what is the value of function f? That's 4. And then always check if you can reduce. In this case, you can't. Alright, on part F, this is asking you to do the composition g of f of 8. we need to evaluate f of 8 first. So that means when x is equal to 8, the value of function f, so that's 7. And then I'm plugging 7 into function g. So x equal to 7, the value of function g is 5. This is asking if f of x equals 3. So in the f of x column, I'm going to go down to 3. What was x? So in this case, x was 10 when f of x was 3. Alright, on part H, consider the graphs of these three functions. Circle all of the following that are functions. So we have the original f of x, g of x, and h of x, and then the inverse of f, inverse of g, and inverse of h. So looking at these graphs, if you kind of sketch for yourself each of them, so f of x is a cubic. We're going to have something that looks like this. G of x is a parabola that's facing down, so something like this. And we have h of x, which is a square root, which looks something like this. So the original graphs, this is a function by the vertical line test. For each input, there's only one output, so I'm going to circle that. G of x is a upside down parabola, vertical line test. This is a function because for every input, there's only one output, and the same for h of x, it is a function. Now if we try to figure out the inverses of each of these, inverse means you're switching the x and the y. So a really quick way to tell is if you just rotate your paper 90 degrees, then you're basically switching your x and your y-axis. So if you imagine that this is your x-axis and y-axis, then if you rotate your paper, then you've switched x and y, and then your graph is going to look something like this. Vertical line test here, the vertical line only goes through the graph at one point at any given x value. So this inverse is a function. Okay, when you look at the inverse of g of x, so again, if you just rotate your paper 90 degrees, the vertical line test shows here that for a given x value, my pen is going through two different points. So for an input, we have multiple outputs. So this one is not a function. And then the inverse of h of x, if we put a vertical line test through here, it also only goes through one point at a time. So this one is a function. And then the last one here, what is the inverse of this equation? So if we make a table of the original steps in the function and the inverse, if you don't like fractions, you can always split this into two parts. X is being multiplied by 3 and then divided by 4, and then you're adding 6. Okay, you could always switch these two. They have equal precedence. Now if I do the inverse, I'm undoing each of these going backwards. So positive 6, the inverse is subtracting 6. Dividing by 4, the inverse is multiplying by 4. Multiplying by 3, the inverse is dividing by 3. So if we write the inverse, I need to subtract 6 first, then multiply that answer by 4. The whole thing gets multiplied by 4, not just the x, and that entire thing gets divided by 3. If your answer doesn't look like any of the multiple choice, then see if you can rewrite it or simplify it. I'm going to distribute this, so 4x minus 24 divided by 3. And then again, it doesn't look like any of these answers, so I'm going to split it into two parts, 4/3 x and then minus 8. So then it ends up being option 3.